Welcome back, everyone, and I'm joined by Andrew Barton, first officer for a major airline in the U.S. Andrew, thank you very much.
Yeah, well, it's good to be back.
Good deal. So today you're going to go ahead and run us through finance, right? You know, what the airlines kind of look like as far as pay in a very broad scale.
Yeah, careful when you say finance because I'm not a financial expert and I don't want to set expectations. But we are going to talk about compensation, pilot pay, what kind of benefits you get, what that looks like. Because it's one of those things where a lot of people don't realize how pilot pay works. It gets really hard when you go to get a mortgage.
Yeah.
Because banks don't understand at all
Right.
how any of this works.
So let's jump right in. Okay. First off, you're not allowed to work anything more than 1,000 hours a year of flight time, correct?
Basically, yeah, 1,000 hours of block. So the first thing to note with pilot pay is that our ability to work is regulated by this document called FAR 117. This chapter of if you're a pilot, 14 CFR 117, and your ability to work and duty limits and how much you can work and when and how much time off you need in between and rest periods and how long your days can be. That's all governed in that book. So there is a federal regulation that theoretically caps how much you can make as an airline pilot.
Okay.
If you ever hit that, you're doing something really wrong.
Right.
Well,
the airlines are obviously they're going to be keeping an eye on it and trying to stop you from hitting that.
Yeah, there's things in like our scheduling systems prohibit us from intentionally violating like the 100 in a month. Basically, you can't fly more than 100 block hours in a month. That's one, and that's a rolling month. That's not a calendar month. So within the preceding 30 days, there's a look back to how many hours.
And there's safeties in place inside the scheduling application. And
yeah, a lot of airlines add buffers in, like they won't let you get, beyond 95 hours. If you try to pick a trip up and you're at like 94, sometimes they won't let you pick that trip up, even though you might be legal for it. But you get too close. And then if you have like a delay or if you hold or if you're late getting in somewhere, it could potentially push you over that 100. They don't like to let you get that close.
Well, let's dive into it. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's touch regionals for a second. That's probably a safe place to start, I would imagine, because that's where most people are going to start out. Right?
You're absolutely right. Your first stop as an airline pilot, congratulations. You did the training. You spent the hundreds of thousands of dollars on a college degree, if you have one, and a flight training certificate, all your certificates that you need to be there, or you just have the certificates, in which case, congratulations, you got there too. You're about to start as a regional airline first officer. I hope you like ramen.
It's that little pay.
It's gotten a lot better.
Okay.
It's the regional I worked at now is starting people at $91 an hour, and we'll get to that in a second because that's a little not as transparent as it sounds. The regional I worked out, your starting pay will now be around $91 an hour. When I started 7 years ago, coming up on 7 years ago, 6 years ago, it was, I can't remember. It was 51.
Okay.
So there's been a big improvement in first officer pay.
Right.
But yeah, $91 an hour is about what you can expect. It's a lot better.
When you were at your 51, 53-ish kind of dollars per hour, what did you make that first year?
You're going to make me do math. I'll have to go back and look, to be honest with you. But it was 46.
46,000.
Yeah, so $51 an hour sounds like a lot until you actually start extrapolating that math and you realize how little it actually is.
How many hours did you fly that year, do you think?
So this is where it gets tricky, and this is why pilot pay is worth a podcast. It doesn't matter how much you fly, right? So first things first, every airline, every contract that you're on at an airline, every collective bargaining agreement is going to have a set minimum amount of money that you are going to be paid guaranteed, whether you fly or not. Now, if you call in sick or if you take leave, that minimum can be reduced. But because every airline pilot generally starts out their airline career in a staffing position called reserve, you are not given an actual schedule. There is no flying on your schedule. You can't look and see, oh, I'm going to fly this 3-hour flight today and a 4-hour flight tomorrow. That doesn't exist. You basically are there to cover call-ins, cancellations, delayed flights, places where a crew might misconnect, or a trip that has become open or was never staffed, right? And the airline will assign you that flying beforehand. So you're on reserve. You're going to make a minimum guarantee. At my airline, this was $75, 75 hours, right?
Okay.
So $51 an hour at 75 hours a month.
Right.
And the way a reserve generally works is that the airline knows how to use you to get you just up to 74 hours and stop using you.
Right.
Because they're already paying you $75, 75 hours, right? And at some point, there's another guy next to you that's got like 60 hours, and they've got 15 more hours on him before they have to start paying over that minimum. Right. So the airlines are pretty efficient in manipulating their contracts. The rules are supposed to be there that prevent that. The airlines are really efficient at figuring out how to circumnavigate those rules.
Right.
So that's the thing. Like the low value starting pay comes from the 75 hours of credit. And when we say credit, that's how many hours you're actually going to get paid for, right? And that can change. So you get a little bit more seniority under your belt. You've been at the airline a little bit longer. You've grown senior in your domicile and your seat, whether you're a captain or a first officer. And now you get a line, right?
Okay.
Well, the lines are where you make money, right? It's really hard traditionally at a regional airline to make any money on reserve.
Right.
But lines, you can start getting money because now you are flying actual block hours, right? And there's no real way to cap lines at 75 hours.
No.
The airlines don't have a way to do that because they have the flying they need to operate. They have a limited amount of crew they need to schedule it with. And they need to keep a certain percentage of their pilots in reserve, right? So this is where you start getting to 83, 84, 85 hours a month. And at some regionals, you can add or pick up trips in advance, and you can put yourself all the way up closer to 90 if you want, 95, or whatever the limit your airline allows.
Right.
And so now you're making closer to like $5,100 a month rather than, what you would be making at your 75 or your minimum guarantee.
Right. So that was kind of your first year.
Mm-hmm.
Once you held the line, what did that start to look like for regionals?
At the regional, I think my best year as a first officer, I probably made, I want to say close to 70 to 75, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Now, and this is because there's also, once you are a line holder and off reserve, you can start looking for premium pay trips.
Right.
So there are occasions where the airline will say we're out of reserves. Like a big weather system is a great example, right? A big weather system moves through one of our hubs. We have depleted the reserves in that hub, but we still have a ton of open flying there because we've got all these misconnects. We've got all these trips now where we don't have pilots for.
Right.
And so the airlines will begin to drop those trips into what they call open time, which is just it's online, right? It's an online place where you can go and you can look at the trip and you can say, I want that. And to incentivize pilots who have the day off to fly, they'll say, okay, that's at 125% credit, right? So the number of hours that you would get paid for that trip, guarantee, it's now 125% or 150%, or maybe it stays in open time a little bit longer and nobody wants to pick it up. It's 175, right? So they'll take the value of that trip up just to get the trip staffed because it costs the airline a lot more to cancel than it does to pay you that extra to incentivize you to fly. So you can really make up the money on the line pretty quick and pretty easy. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Gets up into the 175% of what you would have made.
That's not common. That's not, I don't want to say that happens a lot, but it does happen enough that it's a nice, oh, hey, we can actually get steak this month, right? You do have that ability.
Okay. And then you hit captain inside of your third year. Was that correct? Was it fourth year?
Yeah. And at the time that was a pretty big pay jump as well. I think I went from, I may have been at $60 an hour as a first officer then, and I think I went to like 95 or close to 100. This was before the airlines went crazy and started doing these wild pay rates after COVID.
Right.
Because I left basically right after COVID, I left to go to my legacy carrier,
Right.
my retirement home.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the jump from first officer to captain is quite noticeable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, the wife's in the room too, just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
Heather's amazing. She decided to come with you. And I think that's why you keep on looking across like, honey, am I
Oh
about to
yeah,
say this?
I'm looking to her because she, it's hard to say. It's hard to explain how important it is to have just having a great partner behind you really makes this career so much easier. And she really has
home
been.
support is really where it's at, right?
It is, yeah.
Derek's, everyone that in life that's successful, I believe, has a really solid foundation at home, and a supportive partner. So
Yeah.
we all feel it. Okay, so now you're into your first year over at Legacies. Now, obviously, I don't really want you to just put it out there with exact numbers, but first year, first officer with a major, roughly, where would that look like now?
So I started right before we got a new contract.
Okay.
So I started on the old pay scale.
Okay.
The new contract has that go up significantly, but I think my first year was maybe 110,000 out the door, and it was actually a bit of a step down. This is where like a lot of people get stuck at the regionals, and this is the easy place to get stuck at the regionals, right? A lot of guys will get to the regional and they'll spend 3 or 4 years there as a captain, right? And they're making, I don't know, $160,000 as a captain with a good schedule. And they've bought the really nice truck and they've got the really big house and they've got all of these costs and expenses. And then they look at going to a legacy carrier and they realize that they're going to take a $70,000 pay cut the first year. But probationary pay at the legacies is pretty much 50% of your second year pay, right? So you're gonna hurt for a year, but she'll tell you it was really noticeable that second year. As soon as I hit second year pay, that pay jumped quite nicely.
Yeah.
And
bumped up quite a lot.
I went. First year I was well below PSA captain. Second year, I was well above PSA captain.
Right.
Easily. And the quality of life, too, just can't be. I mean, it's just a night and day.
You're based in Orlando, so you're kind of, 26%? Are you 26%?
I'm around 30%.
30%.
I'm around 30% in base.
So 30% in base. Just explain that so that people kind of understand. Because that's a QOL thing, quality of life thing, where people start to understand a little bit better why you would want to stay inside of that bracket too.
Yeah. So, and I can't remember if we touched on this a little bit in one of the last episodes we did, but everything at an airline is governed by seniority, and that is your schedule, your pay, the dates you want for vacation, the trips you want to fly, like all of it. Seniority is king in the airlines, and so when we say I'm 30% in base, if you were to take all of the first officers in Orlando and you were to line them up shoulder to shoulder, I'd be at the 30th position from number one, the most senior person. I'm 30% down the line.
Yeah.
And that's beneficial because in that number, usually there's above me a certain percentage is on sick leave or is on military duty. So there's a certain percentage above me that's not going to bid for a schedule or be awarded a schedule,
right?
Which means I'm pretty close to getting my ideal schedule just about every time I bid for one, which is monthly. We bid for schedules monthly, and I get to look. So what's today? Today is the 5th of February. So bidding is now open for March, right? So I will sit down at some point between now and the next couple of days, and I'll look at my computer, and I'll say, I want this day off, this day off, this day off. I want to go to Aruba. I want to go to St. Thomas. I want to go to Punta Cana. I want to go to Cancun, avoid Toronto, avoid Calgary, avoid Vancouver.
Right.
It's wintertime. It's cold up there. I don't do cold. So I will probably come close to getting that schedule pretty ideal. I'll get the days off I want, and I'll probably get pretty close to getting the trips that I want in there as well. Yeah.
So then, obviously, I just want to set this up for everybody as well. don't do it for the money, do it for the love, and then the money will come afterwards.
The money's going to come as the love falls off.
Yeah. So
It's the money's going to come when you start to really feel like I'm being pulled away from my family and kids a lot. Now, it's always important to remember that at some point this was your goal.
yes.
I can't tell you how many pilots I fly with who are just over this career, and I don't get that because at some point this was the thing they worked the hardest for. And I still love what I do.
Yeah.
I will say, since I've had a daughter, it's a lot harder to do.
Any time away from the kids is hard. And the wife.
You know, it's really hard having a newborn at home and knowing that your wife is home alone with the newborn and you're going to lay down in, you know, a JW Marriott in Cancun with the Gulf of Mexico just outside your door and the warm saltwater air blowing in. You know,
Careful, Heather's got a bottle and she
it's a
might throw it
really
over.
hard life.
So, no, I mean, you know, the love of it is what's going to drive you through all of the training.
Yeah.
You know, the thought of the money isn't going to help you through all of that training necessarily.
Yeah, and in that money too, there's a couple things I want to touch on while we still have time. That's straight pay, right? That is just the block hours. Depending on the airline you go to, my legacy, we have a lot of opportunities for ad pay. So the legacy contracts hide money that the regional pilots looking to come up don't usually see, right? So for example, we get really nice penalties for a long duty day. So if I'm on duty for more than 10 hours, but still less than the FAR 117 minimums, anything between the 10-hour mark and the FAR 117 maximum for that day, I get a nice penalty for. Same thing too. Like if I get home late, let's say I take a maintenance delay on go home leg and I wind up getting home 4 hours late, 5 hours late the next day. Oh, there's money there. There's a lot of money right there. Now, I always want to get home. Don't get me wrong. Go home is the priority. But if something happens and I get stuck in a hub overnight on my last day of work and I got to get home the next day, that's a lot of pay. Right. That's a lot of pay for me right there. And then there's other things too that a lot of pilots don't consider. We get great health insurance.
Right.
Our health insurance is probably some of the best. I don't know the last time we paid more than like $25 in a copay for any drug at the pharmacy. And the legacies also know because you have a cap on when you will retire. All the legacies have great retirement programs. I get a straight 16% contribution. It's not a match. It's not up to 16% match. I can put 0 in, and my airline is still going to put 16% in every single paycheck.
That's awesome,
right? Which is perhaps one of the best retirement gigs out there, and I'm really grateful for that.
What does vacation time look like?
Really healthy. So for me, where I'm at, I've been with my airline now. I'm at the 3rd year mark in terms of vacation. Right now, I get 2 weeks of paid vacation every single year.
That's nice.
Right. So I want to kind of paint this picture because I have seniority. I can set my schedule up however I want. 85 hours of credit, 85 hours of pay usually means that I am flying 15 days a month, right? Vacation is going to give me, so if I put my 2 weeks of vacation back to back, that's going to give me, I think, close to 35 hours of pay, maybe a little bit more. I have to look at the contract. I actually have vacation coming up, so I should know this, but that's going to give me probably close to a third to maybe half, somewhere in there, of the pay I'm going to get for that month if I use both weeks of vacation the same month. And then I can bid for days off that bracket that vacation time. And so I might only have to fly a 2 or 3 day trip at the beginning of the month and maybe a 2 or 3 day trip at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And that's what would be a full month's. So I might only work 6 days in vacation month and come out with a full month's worth of pay. No, I don't, because I'm a glutton for punishment and I like a lot of money. But the senior pilots, once you get up there in age, our senior captains get 4 years of vacation, or 4 weeks of vacation a year.
Wow.
Right? 4 weeks of vacation, that's a whole month of paid vacation. and so it can be a really beneficial.
Well, my wife, as you know, is still with our former employer, and she's just at 4 weeks vacation now after 20 years.
I don't say she's been there for a while. I'm sure. Yeah.
So that was, to put that in some sort of perspective, a perspective.
Yeah.
That's 20 years to get 4 weeks. So
yeah, we don't have to go quite that far.
Yeah.
We don't have to go. Actually, year 5, I jumped to 3 weeks, I'm pretty sure. So in 2 years, I'll get 3 weeks of paid vacation every single year.
Oh, that's nice.
But again, a normal month of flying is 15 to 16 days on the road.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not.
But in person, it starts, you've got to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So it works out pretty good. Okay. Have you got anything else you want to say on pay?
I could go on for hours, but nothing here. No, yeah.
So, Andrew is in the pilot union as well. You're actually like in the pilot union, not just a member of, correct?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I am a volunteer.
Right.
Every pilot at my airline and any airline that has a union, I'm looking at you, SkyWest, because I don't. Every airline that has a union, every pilot at the airline is in the union unless they explicitly state, I'm not in the union, in which case, congratulations, you're not in the union, but you're still going to pay the union dues.
So if there are any questions, the reason why I bring that up, if anyone's got any questions, put them in the comments. I speak to Andrew pretty much weekly, so we can go ahead and figure out answering back without specifics about airlines, which is where we are going to draw the hard line and not get into that.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode, check out one of these videos, former videos with Andrew, and we look forward to seeing you the next time. Please do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, and get entered into that 5 free flight hours to 1 lucky subscriber. Thank you. Take care. Stay safe.